Hey, good evening, everybody. Paul Sterling here, and welcome to the Courageous Love Show. Um, Tonight, I'm going to be talking. Oh, by the way, I am the author of Argue Less, Love More. And tonight, we're going to be talking about um, autonomy versus boundaries versus walls. And I've got some guests on with me from Vermont. So I'm on the West Coast and they're on the East Coast. Hi, Eli, and somewhere out there, Monica probably getting.
Hello. Can you see me?
I can hear you. Your video seems to be frozen.
Interesting.
So I can't
One
see
moment.
you. And by the way, everybody, this is interactive. This is live. This is where you can ask questions. You can make comments. I am going to be reading the live stream here as much as I can. Some of the comments will come through, some won't. But I'd love to know where you're dialing in from or where you're watching this Facebook Live from, because we have people come in from all around the world. And then let's see. I'm going to see if we can get my guests on. They're having a hard time with the video. And what I want to do, here we go.
There I am.
Yay, looks like you're moving. So we're going to dive in here. And part of the reason I wanted Eli and Monica to come on the show is because we want to interact live on these three areas. Where is it we want autonomy? Where is it we want boundaries? And where is it that we want walls? And what's it take? So I'm going to share my screen and get us a little caught up, and then we're going to interact back and forth. So I was in New York, and I tell this almost every live I do, but I was in New York a couple of years ago, and the subway was overwhelming. And just for a second, Eli, can you mute just until I get done with the intro? And then they're in the process of cooking dinner. So this is a live. Anyway, in New York City, trying to find my way around in the subway, and there is 840 miles of track. There's 472 stations serving 27 subway lines. And so to find your way around, what do you need? Let me change this you need a map. And a map from where you are to where you want to go. And one of the ways to get there is to figure out these three things. Where do you need autonomy? Where do you need boundaries? Where do you need walls? So I am going to skip one more step up here. So, and then I'm going to unmute yourself and let's see. There we go. So I am Paul Sterling. I've already introduced myself a little bit. I am a relationship and intimacy coach and have been for 25 years. So I'm on one end of the spectrum. Eli's newer to the world of relationships and soon to become a dad. How did you end up being on this call? So, and I know Monica is going to join you at some point.
She'll be here soon, yes.
So how did you end up here in studying relationships?
Mm-hmm. Well, I met a beautiful wild woman, and we're having a baby, and I desperately needed relationship coaching. And because I have very, very poor communication skills, and so we have this dynamic where Monica and what happens is that I freeze up and Monica attacks and attacks. She's laughing.
So hold on, Eli, just for 1 second. Hold on. First place, I really want to acknowledge the hell out of Eli, because it takes so much courage even to say what he's saying. And it's actually more normal than people talk about. one of the partners, and I'd love for people in the comments, which one are you? Are you the one that goes into freeze and gets quiet, or are you the one who attacks? And in relationships, I have been both. In growing up, it wasn't safe for me to make a stand. It wasn't safe even for me to have boundaries, because in my family, when I had boundaries, and we'll talk about this more, that was like my brother said, oh, that's a weak spot. Wherever I wanted to put up a boundary, that's where he knew something valuable was there. My self-esteem, a friend I didn't want him to take away. Mm-hmm. So all of that. So I'm going to bounce back to you, Eli, but I wanted people to relate. Can you relate to this? That like at some levels, this is not an abnormal pattern. It's a really normal pattern. And the first step is recognizing it. So you guys are really being rock stars here.
Thank you. Thank you.
So back to you, Eli. How else? And so you had this pattern going on, and how do you end up on a show about relationships?
Well, we reached out to you, Paul, and just through communicating with you, and we bought your book, and we kind of been reading through that. We had definitely seen huge progress and perspective in using the tools you've shown, the relationship tools to keep our life together. Me and Monica, like on fire, like together, like, and that's how I want to be doing everything I can to show Monica and to really to be living the best life I can be. So that's why I am here. Yeah.
Awesome. And see, the thing is, if you think about it, people get this, they really screw this up. And what they screw up is that they think that that you're supposed to be born with good relationship skills. Mm-hmm. Like people aren't born a dentist. They're not born a pilot. They're not born a lawyer. Oh, look at this little baby lawyer here. It's like they get trained. But we think that somehow we're supposed to know how to be in a relationship.
Yeah. And
you've jumped into the deep end, about to be a dad. And that's why I love that you're on the call, because you need all of the tools you can get. And it's not about who you are, because it's easy to say, oh, I should know more. And I don't. So let's start looking at the map of relationships, and we'll interact back and forth here. But can you relate to these 5 areas? So, and everybody listening, what I want you to do, you can either share it or not share it. Depends on how bold you want to be. And by the way, if you've got questions, you can put them in the comments, or you can direct message me if they're more personal, and you just want to have a private message to me. So you may not want to say that your relationship's in crisis, or you may. But here are the 5 different stages relationships are in. Now, it's not perfect, but it's helpful. At the bottom, crisis. This is where you're in a place, should I stay, should I go? And it's on a daily basis. You go to bed at night wondering, should I stay, should I go? The next level up is conflict. And it's not like every relationship has conflict once in a while. This is like a constant state of conflict. Stuck in a rut, that's a 3rd stage up there. And stuck in a rut's not good, not bad. It's in the middle. It's sort of like Groundhog Day for your relationship. You're dealing with the same issues over and over again. You're not moving ahead. You're not moving behind. Things are good. It's satisfying, but you're settling. And then at the top, things are great. There's a special spark, remarkable, extraordinary. So Eli, rather than saying where you are, I'm going to ask you where you want to be.
Well, right. I definitely want things to be extraordinary. Having that special spark, remarkably, yeah, and having those magic moments.
Yeah, and so each of these steps, the interesting thing is each one of them has a different thing that you need to do. If you are down here in crisis, the number one thing you need to do, stop doing damage.
Mm-hmm.
Figure, it's like, sounds so obvious. If you're in conflict, it's learning how to resolve conflicts rather than recycle them and heal the hurts. If you're stuck in Groundhog Day, it's doing great daily gratitudes. And if you're good and you want to go to great, it's reawakening the dreams and possibilities. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask, this is one of those almost rhetorical questions, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Eli, is it easier to deal with an oak or an acorn?
An acorn.
Acorn. And what people say is don't sweat the small stuff. The problem with small stuff is it becomes
huge,
big stuff. Mm-hmm. And so in a relationship, it's so important. And that's why we're going to talk about, again, autonomy, boundaries, and walls. So get them when they're small, because if you can catch them when they're small, you don't have to put up a wall. It's got kind of a ring. I'm going to do a rap. If you catch them when they're small, you don't have to put up a wall. You can put up a boundary, and you can. Well, that's the end of my rap. Okay.
I'll have Monica come over. She can help you out.
Cool. Okay. Here we go. Here we go. Let's just look at where in the world do you want autonomy? Where do you want boundaries? Where do you want walls? So I'm going to start with walls. Where do people put up walls? If you think about it, not just in relationship, but in real life. So this is a castle. If you think there is an enemy, you put up walls. So the Great Wall of China, Trump wanted to put up a wall between the United States and Mexico. There's all the, like when I was in Johannesburg in Africa, there's these gated communities and every house has a wall around it. And what happens is we put up walls when we don't think our boundaries are going to be respected. Mm. And sometimes, like in a relationship, if a relationship goes through a breakup, I went through a breakup, and part of the reason I went through the breakup is I kept trying to get boundaries respected, and the agreements weren't kept. And so I ended up putting up a wall. Mm. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And I would have much rather had a boundary than a wall. Mm-hmm. And so where in the world, Eli, if you could think about it, have you had intense need for autonomy or for boundaries or for walls? And I'd love to hear from people who are listening where they've needed autonomy, boundaries, walls.
Right. Well, see, boundaries, like in relationships, like I know for my body, I need certain things throughout the day. Like I need to work out, and I need time to be alone, and things like that. I just right. And the thing with walls is usually happens when, like you said, like boundaries are not, like agreements aren't being kept, and so the trust degrades and communication is blocked. And so with walls, it's usually something I'm really afraid of going, or some kind of fear or jealousy that I perhaps have. Like I don't want to do this. I don't know. I'm jealous of this person coming over, or something like that.
Yeah, it's a rule, it's a should, it's a have to, it's a must. Mm-hmm. It's not, and it's not necessarily mutually agreed upon.
No, it usually isn't. Yeah.
In fact, if you look at it, I'm going to give some extreme examples, but a restraining order is a wall. Mm-hmm. Or a demand for space can mm-hmm. be a wall. One person says, I need space, and so boundaries can actually give us a lot of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're clear boundaries, and boundaries are what you already said, Eli, is boundaries are an agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the other night I was talking to a friend of mine, Scott Katamas, who runs Love Coach Academy. We were walking around the neighborhood and we're having a conversation about autonomy, boundaries, and walls. And it's like we noticed in the neighborhood, some neighbors, there's a boundary in between their homes. Like you can tell where one person's property ends and the other starts, but there's no fence, there's no nothing, there's just a transition. And there's a clear boundary though. And as long as the boundaries are respected,
mm-hmm.
you don't need walls. Now, on the other end, autonomy, where is it that we need autonomy? So if you look at how America, without getting too politically involved, America was created because part of it was religious freedom, religious persecution. So some people needed autonomy in the way they express their relationship to religion.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you look at it, that's something that we want a lot of autonomy. In America here, we want autonomy about our voting. And some people don't want us to have autonomy, so they're putting up some interesting boundaries and some walls.
Uh-huh.
Not a political talk here, but it's just I want people to see that this is the meta picture and the micro picture.
Mm-hmm.
So in the relationship, where do you want autonomy? What do you want autonomy about? Eli, just so out of curiosity. Monica can pipe in. I know she's there somewhere anytime she wants to tell what she wants autonomy about. Because you did say you have a wild woman. And one of the things about a wild woman or a wild man is a strong need for autonomy.
Right. Definitely. I know I need autonomy in being able to decide with my time, like what to do. Like when I'm passionate about something, I need to be able to set time aside to do that, mm-hmm. and not be able to be like managed what that is I'm doing. That's like something really important to me, that I need freedom somewhere to be able to be self-growing and not have to be following someone else's directions.
Right. And so freedom, time, not following somebody else's directions, these are all autonomous. And there's a whole sovereignty sort of movement. And if you look at it, what happened recently, and when I say recently, I'm talking about historically recently, women got the right to vote, to own property. So they got power and property. And now what they're getting, which it seems ridiculous even to have to say it, but they're getting sovereignty over their body, which is about their pleasure and their passion, and they're getting autonomy in that area. And there's men that are rebelling against it, that are trying to control, and the whole battle of birth control and who gets to say what about the feminine body. But that is, and here we are, two guys talking about that. warning. But women can chime in anytime they want there. Here are some areas to talk about, and I'm going to add that one that you just said. Money, relationships, children. You have how many children right now?
4 with 1 on the way.
So there are going to be 5 children. So there's a real question about how much autonomy do you give them? Where are the boundaries? Where are the walls?
Right.
And then not the bigger question, that's a huge question, but the question is, then how do you create agreement between the two parents about where this is? Because if you don't, then the kids know how to manipulate you.
Right. We'd be on the same team. Yeah.
Yes, and here we go. There.
Well, they'll start a mutiny. Yeah.
Yes, and Natalie just chimed in here, said, "Female here, yes, still struggle for the anatomy of our bodies," and there's a lot of shame in our culture around pleasure. You know, there's a whole movement of women teaching women about how to own their pleasure, and it's embarrassing almost to talk about how you know, people can talk about almost anything except for what they like around the area of sex and sexuality.
Yeah.
All right. So children, then in the relationship, and you can talk about this one too, but autonomy is there, because on one end of the spectrum, we have polyamorous or open relationships. And on the other end of the spectrum is thou shalt not look at another human being but me. Mm-hmm. So there's anywhere from way over here, poly, to over here, rigid, you know, and talking about what's in between and dealing with it in a way that creates more harmony and health.
Right. But that's
another.
Oh, you continue.
Go ahead. No.
Yeah. About that is like, when you get with someone, it's kind of like also discovering their boundaries, and as to what they're open to, regarding seeing other people or being monogamous. And so you have a boundary of saying, like, you know, I don't want you to see other people, and I just want to be with you because I love you. And so that would be a boundary. And then to create a wall would be to...
Well, wait, Eli, just 1 second. That would be a request.
Yeah.
That's not a boundary yet. That's a request.
Okay.
See, a boundary is when we get agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Are you willing to not see other people?
Right.
So what we often confuse is a request for a boundary. I asked her not to see anybody else. She never said she wouldn't. She never said she would. So I assumed there was agreement, but then there isn't. What Tony Robbins said is most rules are unspoken until broken. Mm-hmm. And that's where we discover where our boundaries are. No.
Yeah.
I didn't just mean that you couldn't sleep with somebody else. I meant no kissing to or no whatever. Like, when I saw that, I went, ah. Mm-hmm. So, and with you becoming a dad, boundaries are going to change because there's a whole nother level of responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm making up. Okay, good. So I'm gonna, Monica.
Mm-hmm. I had to feed the kids, and I'm 6 months pregnant, and I just had to eat something. So
listen. So that was you taking care of yourself and being autonomy. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to dive in from the beginning a little bit here, and just ask how you got into the world of I mean, there's a lot of people have relationships. You know, a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But you've taken a deeper dive. What caused you to take a deeper dive into the world of relationships?
Are you talking about like a romantic relationship?
Well, not just romantic relationship, but you've studied relationships. You're starting to study them. You're starting to think about them in a different way rather than just be in a relationship.
Oh, okay.
So sorry if my question wasn't clear.
Oh yeah, no. Thank you for clarifying. I think that for me, I've always been really sensitive about the relationships in my life. They have a profound effect on my peace of mind, whether that is happening or not. Ever since I was like very young, I just, I really like the people, like my sisters, I have twin sisters, they were my world. And, you know, if I was worried about them, it would be all consuming. Like I've always just cared very much about the people in my life, to this day. And so when I was, you know, in my teens and early 20s, I started reading books about communication and relationships because, like you, Paul, I was not raised in a home where those things were taught. I was raised in a home where children are seen and not heard, and the adults in the home tell you what to think, how to think, what to say, when to say it. Everything was dictated. And so it took me some time, and I'm still learning to, you know, develop tools and for me, my big breakthrough is even just being able to express and articulate my feelings, because for so long I was misunderstood. And I was so angry and frustrated because I didn't have the tools to express my truth. So people would just be so loud with theirs that it would overwhelm me. And then I would absorb it. And I would think, well, they're louder. They have more votes. They must be right about me. And it took a huge toll on my self-esteem. And it wasn't till, you know, doing the work for myself and then finding my own voice and being able to express that in my relationships, that's been a tremendous help for me and for people who love me, even people like my aunt and uncle in California who are very different from me, live a very different lifestyle. We now have this mutual respect because I am able to express my boundaries and who I am, and I'm also able to respect theirs.
Yeah, because I'm going to say this in going back up here, the autonomy, boundaries, and walls. A lot of families have a real problem with this. And if you're different than the family, rather than boundaries, they put up walls. Whoops. So if you don't believe the same religion that I believe or something like that, you know, that you're no longer part of the family, or if you're more liberal or you're more conservative, either one.
Yeah.
Like there's this wall versus a respectful boundary. And we were talking about the different areas. So autonomy, where is it that you need autonomy? Where is it that you need boundaries? And where do you need walls? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to hear a little bit from you, Monica, on those three. And then we're going to dive into some specifics that we were started on.
Right. Well, before I had children, I wasn't as clear what my all three of those were for me. I was just kind of figuring things out as I went. But when I had a big wake up call for me was when I became a mother. And I remember there was this one specific moment when my daughter was still very, very young. She was like a baby. And I had a friend who I had for many years. And I'm using the word friend, the term loosely here. But for years, I thought this person was my friend. And they were just kind of like a toxic person. But I couldn't see it before, and I would tolerate all sorts of behavior because of my self-esteem, and I felt lucky to have a friend. And when I hadn't seen her in years, and then I saw her again, and I was a mom, and I was really excited, and I introduced her to my daughter, and everything went well that day. And then something happened where I didn't call her back right away. And she called my phone and left this really hostile message. Like she would get really defensive if you didn't call her back right away or whatever. And she threatened to call child services on me if I didn't call her back. And I just thought, oh my God, like I can't be friends with this person. I'm never going to talk to them again. And I immediately put up a wall because that person threatened my child. So I discovered very quickly as a mother where my walls were going to be. And that is anyone who I deem as a threat to my children, whether they're a friend or family or whoever, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Well, see, as soon as you and I had used the word earlier, as soon as it's an enemy, we use walls for enemies or people that don't respect our boundaries. And that was a great example of safety.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't get agreement, and this is getting into raising children, which you just did a great example of it. But sometimes what can happen is if people don't agree on how they're going to raise their kids, their partner can feel like the enemy.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes men and women have very different ideas of how to raise Junior.
Yeah. And Junior was growing in mom's womb for 9 months. So mom's definitely going to have something to say about that.
Right. And the problem is that a lot of times we don't talk about it. We just assume it. So we assume that because I'm the mom or because I'm the dad and I know how I was raised and I was raised the right way. So we're going to hit the kid, or we're not going to hit the kid, or we're going to do, they're going to go to Catholic school, or they're never going to get inside a church in their lives. So it's like all of these different things that we think are the right way, but we never get agreement with our partner. And then we're really surprised when they do the opposite.
Mm.
So, Monica, another one is that these are some areas, whichever one you want to touch on a little bit, but money, because where do you want autonomy? Where do you want boundaries? Where do you want walls? Like because you have kids, and there are going to be 5 of them, there's financial, there's a cost to raising kids. And so if somebody says, I earned the money, do I get to spend the money, or do we save it together? So there's a whole chance for different autonomy, for boundaries, and for walls about who gets to spend and who doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So anything you want to say about that one?
About money specifically?
Yeah. Or any of these. You can pick any one of these. But what I want people to do that are listening is they can make their own list. They can take this list. They can make their own list. But what we're trying to do is make the invisible visible so that there can be a conversation, because a lot of times conflict happens when there's unspoken expectations.
Yeah.
They're not boundaries, they're not agreements, but I expect you to behave this way around the kids, around relationship, around money, around health. So what's coming up, Monica? I'm just wanting to hear from you as you're looking at this list for the first time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, maybe a little bit bigger. But the one of health pops out to me. But before I get into that, since Eli and I have met, I've been really clear. I would say that I'm exceptionally clear compared to probably a lot of people, because I already had 4 children when we met. And so I was really clear on a lot of these issues, especially regarding children and health, and the home and even time, just because I'm a homemaker. I'm always home with my kids. I homeschool them. And so I'm there. I'm like a hawk. I'm looking at everything going on in my home. And I know, like, one time I saw this food in Eli's car, and it was like, it had like, I don't know, high fructose corn syrup and food coloring in it, and just a bunch of stuff I don't allow in my home or in my sphere.
Okay, so wait, hold on 1 second. I want everybody to hear that. I don't allow in my home. It wasn't our home. It wasn't an agreement. It was like
calling me out.
Mama Bear. And so was that a boundary or a wall?
It was a boundary. It's just like
Oh,
this.
no. There was no boundary in there. There was armed guards. It was a wall. No, I'm going to shoot anybody who brings fructose in here.
It's not thrown in the street. I can see myself doing that though, but no, it was thrown away.
Yeah. See, see what I'm trying to say lovingly, and I love you guys, and I know you can handle it, but it's like, we often think it's an agreement, but it's really, it's
my way or the highway.
Yes, that's a wall. That's not a boundary. That's not an agreement. It's my way or the highway. And the problem with that, and it becomes so tempting in those really important areas like health, like the kids, all the rest of that.
Yeah.
The problem is that if we use force, what we get is resistance. So if we don't get agreement, then what happens is they eat their candy before they get home. They eat their, it's like
donut or their ice cream cone.
when mama's not looking, the kids will play. So it's like learning, and it's so scary when it's so precious. Your health, your children, all the rest is really precious. So it's tempting to get like rigid. Thou shalt not.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the problem is it creates resistance and resentment and regret. And what we're trying to do is create connection and cooperation and compassion and alignment. And, it's like, how do we do this so it's our kids, our home, our agreements?
Yeah.
And I understand if there's anything that endangers the kids, you're probably going to put up a wall and, be behind it with.
A lot of these foods that people call foods, I think they're just as bad as crack cocaine. I don't see a difference. Like, I really don't. Just because one is socially acceptable and one isn't, it has no bearing on me. So I am very passionate about autonomy and health, because if you take care of your health, then you don't have to rely on what I feel is a horrendous establishment. I won't get into that, but that's what it's really tied into. Is I don't want to be dependent on Western medicine, healthcare, what I call death care. So, I have these boundaries about what we eat, how we live our lives, to protect my family from, what I've seen a lot of people suffering, endlessly with pills and surgeries and, a revolving door into the health clinic.
And see, why this is important is I want people to think about this. If you were to be I know this is going to sound odd, but if you were going to be in a relationship with Monica, you can tell right away where her values are. And if your values are not there, if you're thinking that you're going to be able to eat at McDonald's and still be here, it's probably going to be not a good relationship, And I know that Eli and her are fine. They're wonderful together. But I'm just saying it's important to know what are your walls, what are your boundaries, what's your autonomy in these key areas. And there's some others like religion, politics right now. Politics has become incredibly polarizing. Yeah. So where is it that in the relationship, it's okay to have autonomy in politics, and where are your boundaries and where are your walls? And I know lots of people that have a very rigid wall. If you voted for them, thou shalt not enter my house. So it's important to have these conversations. And the thing is, we're all unique human beings. Where I need autonomy may be different, and where I need boundaries. Like I grew up, and I'm outing myself. I'm on the scale of jealous, I'm somewhat jealous. So I have to have different boundaries around in relationship. I've tried polyamory. Polyamory, not for Paul. If I'm with somebody who needs to express themselves, they need the autonomy there, I would not be a good match. you know? And so it's like understanding this in advance. And for the people who are in a relationship right now, what you could do is watch this again with your partner and go, oh, let's look at money. What is it where we need some autonomy? And if one person earns a lot, like if in this case, I'll use you two as my example, but if Monica was staying at the house as a stay-at-home mom with, at some point, 5 children, a little hard to go get a job with 5 children, does it, and Eli, if Eli's earning the big bucks, then does it mean Eli gets to spend more than Monica because he earned it? Or is it? But see, this is where it's important to actually have a conversation and come to some agreements. And what's really important for couples is to have some money, even if it's totally pooled money that you normally have, some money that you have total autonomy over. So if I'm making up numbers, but $100 a week comes in, which wouldn't feed anybody, but $10 I get for autonomy, $10 you get, and then $80 goes into the main fund to feed the house, all the rest of it. So where is it you need autonomy? Where is it you need boundaries around the money? And where is it there's a wall? This is like a savings account for the kids, for the college fund. It will not be touched. There's a rigid wall. And so does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then what about for the home? Monica, you've got some ideas for autonomy for the home and boundaries and walls. What is it about the home? So I just want examples for people to look at.
Right. Like one thing is I don't allow shoes in our home. Did I say allow again? I come from a authoritarian background, and it has come out in my motherhood. I went years being like a dreadlocked, drum-toting, barefooted hitchhiker to becoming a mom. And then as the years have gone by, 11 plus years now of being a mother, it's like I've gotten like very clear on what I like and what I don't like.
Got it. Yeah. And by the way, Monica, Natalie just wrote this in, said Monica is providing an incredible amount of unpaid work in the home and schooling for the kids. Yeah. And thank you for that, Natalie. And thank you for that, Monica. And sometimes that's like the most critical years of their life. And we send them off to be raised basically by somebody else.
Strangers. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can't even fathom that. Like the moment I held Abigail, my oldest, in my arms, there was no part of me that could imagine giving that child to someone else to take care of while I couldn't. So I actually, for a couple of years while I was single mother, I did woofing. Where, you go and you do work exchange on homesteads and farms in exchange for like a small stipend and food and board. And I did that and bartering with Abigail and like a sling or nearby playing with toys, but always in my vision because that was something that I always wanted to have autonomy in is being a mother and caring for my own children and caring for them the way I feel.
Right. And people I want to be incredibly clear about this, that there's nothing I'm saying in this that there's a right way. What I'm saying is it's really important conversation to have to find your way.
Yeah.
There are some women that really don't want to give up their career for kids. And I have some clients, because I coach couples from all around the world and very diverse. And she's a super high paid executive and he stayed at home. And she's down in LA running, I'm not going to mention one of the companies that she's in, but it's like, you would all know the company. And so that was what worked for her. And I hear what works for Monica. So we're not here to tell you that there is a right way, but find your way. And the challenge is to get clear on it and get agreement, have conversations about it.
Yeah.
You know, and another one is work. And I mean work, there's two kinds of work. There's work, go and get your career, but there's work around the house. And who gets to do the work? And I'm going to be, I'm outing myself a little bit, but there tends to be this term that men use, like I'm helping my wife, girlfriend with the housework. Like it's her work to do. When did she get assigned that? And I'm helping with it. Oh, man. And I've been guilty of that. I've been guilty of that feeling and that thought because I was doing other work. So that's an interesting conversation there about who does the work. And hi, Heidi, and hi, everybody else that's watching here. Saying hi to people around the world. Anything about housework, Monica or Eli? Eli, what would you like to say about housework?
We actually do have conversations about these things, and like you said before about we only really find our boundaries when they're broken. We're clearly how, and so we have kind of understood what duties need to be done in the house. Like I need to take the trash out. The garage is my space to take care of. The outside, and Monica really likes to cook for everybody, and so I can clean the kitchen, or
you can prep.
Yeah, if she needs help cutting things, because I would
my sous chef
work in the kitchen, so I can cut things properly, so I can do that. And so we do have fairly clear boundaries or agreements upon what we do for the house chores.
He does a lot more right now just because I'm in my third trimester and I don't have a lot of energy. So
as it should be.
Yeah. So he so you do, I would say you do more housework right now than I do.
Well, yeah, it's as long as it's vocalized and it's clear and there's agreement on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes being somewhat vulnerable to ask for what you want and need.
Mm-hmm.
And division of labor within the house is a topic that might be discussed and added to this chart. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for that. And I sort of said that in work. I meant housework versus this is career up here, work. So, and let me ask a question. This is a different question, but where is it in the relationship? And this is a vulnerability, but where is it in the relationship where you've had expectations that ended up being a collision because your partner didn't have the same understanding? There wasn't a clear agreement. There was an expectation.
When we first got together, and it was like this honeymoon phase where like my sleep hours completely changed to Eli's, and I went from going to bed definitely more on the earlier side to like staying up all night with Eli, and then we would sleep in, and my oldest would like serve cereal to everybody. It was like we would be still in bed, and we did this for a while, and it was like fun, and then all of a sudden one day I woke up and I got mad at Eli for sleeping in. Because I was starting to wake back up at like around 8:30, in the morning. And I'm like, it's 11. Why are you in bed? And it wasn't even like a smooth transition. Like I was like, one day I just started shouting at him, like and calling him a bum. It wasn't a good day. That was like my first trimester, right? When I think, yeah. And then I just realized I didn't want to do that anymore. I'm like, I want us to be up in the morning. I want us to be like, have a full day, get really good sleep. I was getting bags and it was dark circles, and it was like, I was sleep deprived, and I just wanted us to like get on a more of a, at least get to bed like before midnight.
Yeah. And that was
the conversation was had. Yeah. And then we could see that this is, we needed that. We both actually wanted that. And so we could both work towards it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the, whoops. Put that on for the next time I do this, the sleep agreements.
It's big. It's a big one.
But I wanted people to see, like, for you, Monica, it became an expectation, and then you were holding him to it versus the agreement. Yeah,
I don't think that we like had like a real thorough conversation before I just started getting upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
This guy just sleeps in all day, and then it was like, and then I think that's when we kind of figured out like, oh, and then that's when we kind of had the talk. But it kind of, I guess I let it, I don't know, build up until it bothered me, or I don't know why it took that, but yeah.
Yeah, we just got another comment. Great conversation. Speaking of working in the home, I need to drop off and get a kid to bed. Thank you for this topic and open sharing from Eli and Monica. And thank you, Natalie. And she's going to go get one of her kids in bed, which is perfect example of how this all works. So, Eli, for you, any in getting together with Monica, any shifts, changes in your boundaries and expectations and walls and autonomy?
Well, yeah, I mean, I moved, I was completely like free, working for myself. Like, well, not working for myself, but I was working in a restaurant. Like, I was living by myself completely, and coming into a house full of, a full house where all my money is going into this, and all my energy and time is going here. And so, yeah, my autonomy and what I could do, had what kind of freedom I had to do what I wanted, was definitely decreased down, very small. And I have to share boundaries or expectations or rules with what we both need from each other and with the family and for the family. And so yeah, it was definitely a huge shift in boundaries.
Yeah, and autonomy and and it's hard with 5 kids, or 4 now, going to be 5, to have walls. Mm-hmm. Any privacy at all is sometimes.
Right. Very true. Yeah.
So, I'm going to just ask, I'm about to wrap this up. And for people who want more information, who want to get coached, who want to actually look at their relationship and look at how to set up these agreements, these boundaries, and where you want autonomy and where you want boundaries and where you want to set up walls, I'm going to tell you in a minute how you can have a session with me. But any last thoughts before I go to this last sort of phase here? Anything that came up for you in just being able to see this autonomy, boundaries, and walls chart?
Well, consistency, I would say, has been the number one challenge for, I think, with more with Eli, because a lot of things I'm pretty clear across the board on for myself. Mm-hmm. Some things I have that fluctuate based on my mood. But with Eli, the biggest challenge I've had with like respecting his boundaries and his autonomy has been that like he'll, you know,
keeping the agreements and
yeah, it's like you saying, okay, like I'm gonna do this. Like the other night, okay, I have to say this really quick. The other night when we made love and we had that like this beautiful time, and it was this beautiful moment, and then after I was like, do you want to just like make a nap and I'll make dinner and bring it to you? And you're like, I might rest for a little while, but then I'm going to go downstairs. I'm going to exercise. And I was like, oh, okay, well, and you're like, yeah, just bring me a snack in about 20 minutes. I'll have that. And then I'll go exercise. I'm like, okay. So I went downstairs, think, okay, I'm going to do my part. I'm going to make dinner. I'm going to get Eli his snack. And I kind of had my whole night kind of mapped out based on what he said. I didn't tell him what to do. This is what he said he's going to do. Well, he comes downstairs after he has a snack, like 40 minutes later. And I see him like, okay, I'm like, I can't really talk right now. I'm engaged with making dinner and the kids and all that. So he was like, okay. So he goes into his office and I'm thinking he's gearing up to do his exercise routine. And about a certain amount of time goes by and I kind of peek in on him and he's sitting on his bed on his cell phone playing Minecraft. And that really bothered me because at that, for me, like, now what do I expect? You said this is what you're going to do. And I expected that. And that's not happening. And it really triggered me. Mm-hmm. And that's happened quite a bit, like that sort of. So consistency.
Yeah. And like you had said before, that if I had said that if I just wanted to
play Minecraft.
No, or even just like, just like take a nap or whatever.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have been.
I wouldn't have minded. Yeah. I was just like, whatever, So
the breaking of the expectation or the boundary that I set, that I was going to do, it kind of created a wall between us. The trust broke down, right?
Oh God, you guys it's so bad that this is the end of the call, but it's so good, because the thing is, without the respect of the boundaries mm-hmm. and the agreements being kept, trust and intimacy disappear. Mm-hmm. And part of it was keeping the expectations. So if it's almost like in this case, if Eli had just said, I need autonomy time, I need 40 minutes to do whatever the hell I want. I may work out, I may do this, I may do that. That would have created one expectation, but I'm going to go work out creates another expectation. And Monica then gears around that expectation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you guys have been amazing. I am going to just tell people a little bit about what they can do if they want more information. I said at the beginning, but I am the best-selling author of this book, Argue Less, Love More, which is all about relationship communication. So to do these autonomy, boundaries, and walls, it's really important to have good communication skills, because there's a lot of opportunities for screw-ups, misunderstandings, arguments. This book ended up being #1 on Amazon in counseling, in couples and marriage, family therapy, marriage, healthy relationships, and the subject, I didn't even know I was #1 in dysfunctional relationships. So I know, it's like, there you go. That's what I built my life to be. I have a video about intimacy on Tantra and Sacred Sexuality on YouTube that's now been seen over 6 million times, because it's part of relationships and relationship communication. So the question, now that we've gone through this and people have, Eli and Monica and I have shared pretty vulnerably the impacts of what it means to have clear autonomy, clear boundaries, and clear walls. Do you want to turn decades into days? This is what Tony Robbins, I used to work for Tony years ago. He said, find a mentor and you can turn decades into days in transforming anything, your business, your relationship. Don't cut a trail when you can follow a path. People have been there, done that. So here's the thing, your next step. There's 3 things you can do. You can do nothing, avoid and ignore, which basically, I was on the phone with one of my clients tonight, and she said, if it wasn't for getting coaching, it would have wrecked their relationship. Their relationship would have been over by now. But because they had a coach who's like a mirror to be able to reflect things back, they were able to work through issues. So when you're thinking about your relationship, do you want to use the ignore and avoid technique and do nothing and basically wait till it does the crash and burn? So there's that. There's the do it myself, the John Wayne approach. And man, for years I did that. It's called 1 divorce, 4 broken engagements. I'm going to figure this shit out all by myself. God, is that painful and a waste. The third one is get a mentor. If what I've talked to you about tonight resonates with you, let's have a conversation and see whether I'm your person. But if I'm not, there's a lot of other really amazing mentors out there, especially, I work with Scott Katamas, who runs Love Coach Academy. There's other love coaches that might be able to help you learn and grow, turn decades into days. That is the path I recommend. So here you go, 3 options. If you just want to join a Facebook group, get access to all the videos that I've made over the last year and a half, you can go to facebook.com/groups/remarkable relationship. Join our group. It's free. You're not going to get a lot of hounding there. You get notices that I do these calls twice a week. You can join me for the calls. If you want a breakthrough session, and I'm going to ask Monica and Eli to talk about their breakthrough session if they want to, but they had a breakthrough session with me. What was that like for you guys?
It was definitely very powerful to us, and it gives us a huge amount of hope that we could find a way through and be, create the relationship we wanted to create, and that we were capable.
Yeah, and I feel like what Eli said, I felt a lot of hope in the session, because I realized that like a lot of other couples have been where we are, and Paul is so intuitive. Like a lot of the things we were starting to say, he would kind of finish it, and it's like, how did he know that? And it's because he's so experienced with a lot of these issues. And when you're alone going through it, it feels really lonely and alienating. But when you realize that other people have gone through a lot of these things, and they've come out on the other side, then there's this hope that you can too, no matter how like grim it looks.
Yeah. And it is challenging. Relationships are challenging. So even the relationship coaches have coaches. You need a mirror. It's like without a mirror, it's hard to see yourself and hard to see what's going on. So if you want a breakthrough session, and they're about 15 minutes long to 20 minutes long, but you can go to Argue Less, Love More, same name as my book, .net, .net/schedule, and just schedule a appointment there. And if you're in a couple, the 2 groups I work with couples that still love each other, but are having a hard time getting along and want to turn that around. And I work with some singles that want to get relationship ready. They don't want to make the same mistakes over and over again. So you can schedule an appointment there. The last thing, if you want to get my book, you can go to Amazon, spend $19.97. I love it if you do that. You get it's not a hard copy. It's a paperback copy. You can write all over it, make notes, or you can go to arguelesslovemore.net/free book and get a free copy there. So any closing thoughts, Monica, Eli? First place, thank you guys. I love how much you love each other and how amazingly open and honest and vulnerable you are. And you are an example of possibility for couples all around the world. So thank you for that. And any closing statement you want to say?
Thank you so much, Paul.
Yeah, thank
really.
you. We love having you in our lives, and we really appreciate the work that you're doing. And Eli's been working on the book lately, and it's really helping out a lot. And thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And it would be a great favor to me, all of the people out there listening, if you dropped a comment in what you got from tonight. That would be helpful and fun. All right. Ciao.